So what do we want to build in this course section? It will be a blog, but what does this mean? Well, let's maybe start with the URLs and views I'm planning to add, which would make sense for a blog-like application. I want to have one URL, which is basically /nothing after the domain, which should be responsible for loading some starting page, which lists the latest blog posts and some welcome text. I also want to have /posts as a URL which is supported, which loads a page with all the blog posts. So on the starting page, we only have a couple of selected posts, let's say the 3 latest ones. On /posts, I really want to list all the blog posts we have. And of course, we then also should be able to click on an individual blog post and be taken to that blog post detail page then. So that the URL then maybe looks something like this. It contains this identifier for the blog post after /posts, and it loads the individual blog post page which shows the full blog post. So the text and the image and the title of the blog post, something like this. As a side note, this last URL of course should have a dynamic segment. The thing after /posts, that is the dynamic segment, and we could call this kind of value which we capture here a slug. In the monthly challenges app, I called it month because we basically had the month name in the URL. Here, this kind of identifier is typically called a slug. It's not a term I invented, but it basically is a text identifier, a unique identifier, a blog post, an article, things like that. So here we have such a slug-like identifier, which of course should be dynamic. Every blog post should have its own identifier, and the URLs should be able to load these different blog posts. So we don't plan all possible URLs in advance. Instead, we'll have /posts/ some dynamic value, this slug value here, to then load the different posts with those slug identifiers. And if this slug concept is not 100% clear yet, you'll of course see it in action throughout this course module. That's the idea. And in the end, we should have something which looks like this. This should be the application we have at the end. So of course it also includes some styling already, some CSS files which we're going to add. And this will then allow us to navigate between those pages and have a generally working blog. Now, what will be missing at the end of this section is, for example, a database that backs this blog up. Instead, we're going to save all the data in memory, effectively. We're just going to store the data in some Python variables, just as we did it in the monthly challenges. And therefore, such data will always be lost, or changes to such data would always be lost whenever we restart the server. It's not 100% realistic yet, but we are going to dive into using databases later in the course, of course. For the moment, that's what we're going to get started with, and therefore, let's now implement this step by step over the next lectures. Of course, this also is a great practice for you. So now that you know what we want to build, definitely feel free to not continue with the lectures immediately, but instead try building this on your own first. Try implementing all those features I mentioned and showed you and see if you're able to achieve this. If you're not able to make some aspect of this work, for example, if you're not sure how to include an image, maybe skip this part, but try to build the rest. And thereafter, come back here and go through the next lectures together with me to see how I built this step by step. But definitely try it on your own first.